Okay, so welcome, everyone. This is my very first attempt doing a Zoom cast, and something that is very important to me. I've been studying Hermetic philosophy now. um, it's been over 10 years, and the more I learn, the more beautiful it becomes. And so I wanted to begin to share some of the concepts with everyone else. Um, but this is kind of a tough topic to share, simply because there's not really a good starting point, and there's not really a good beginning point to get people going. And so, I think I've come up with a way to present it that most people can relate to. So I want to start out with this picture that you see on the screen. This is what they call the Flammarion engraving, and it has been colorized in modern times. But there's a naive missionary that is seeming to stick his head outside of reality into a different place, and that place is called the Empyrean. And in this place, we learn how to communicate with spirit and understand the things that are of this world but not part in them. And I know that makes not a lot of sense, but hopefully as we go through the day, I can introduce you to some basic concepts that will change your reality, not in the sense that you don't already know these. It's going to put them into context of how you can relate to them a little bit easier. And um, so let's move forward here. So alchemy of color is a thing that I have been developing for some time now. These teachings are extremely old, and we're going to look at that in just a second. But color and the way that we actually see color, especially like right now, looking at a monitor, is a very new concept. And so we're going to look at alchemy today, and a lot of the symbolism. And then I'm going to give you a new symbolism, a brand new symbol, to help um, hold all of this information together and maybe help relate it um, to you um, in a way that you can understand it more clearly. So, the question of what came first, philosophy or religion, I don't think has ever been solved. Um, and most people have a belief system based in religion, and philosophy is something outside of religion. And whenever you talk about philosophy, it usually ends up in a religious conversation. This is the things that I'm presenting to you are not religion. They are philosophy. They go back a long ways, and but I think the best way to understand the philosophy is by looking at the religion that we all know. And our religions have this philosophy imbued within them. And probably it was the ideas behind the religion, the philosophy was the ideas behind the religion to, um, establish the religion in the first place. And so if we look back through all the great thinkers of time, and I always sit and ponder some of these philosophers, that they were true thinkers. They weren't distracted by all the things that we have in the world today, but these were real thinkers, people that tried to explore the inner worlds of their consciousness and help others by seeing the reality from different points of view. And all of these, without any doubt, have had an enormous impact on our society and our cultures throughout the world. And all of these philosophers studied this knowledge. Um, so here this is just a slide you can take a minute to look at, of all the different philosophers that I had up there. And again, these were the movers and shakers of their time. And without them, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. They have really, really contributed much to our society. And so they ask the question, almost all of them in some form or another, what is the single most important objective for a human being to accomplish in this lifetime? And if I had you all in a room together, we'd sit down and we'd talk about this and get all kinds of answers. But the reality is that most of us haven't taken the time to really think about this. What is the single most important objective for us to accomplish in this lifetime? And are we accomplishing that? And if we're not, why not? And probably because we haven't really asked ourselves this question. So, according to these philosophers, and according to, I put this question in chatbot, and this is what came back. Spiritual traditions teach that the ultimate goal of human life is to attain a deep understanding of oneself and the nature of reality, leading to spiritual enlightenment or self-realization. This is in exact alignment with all the great philosophers, saying that the most important thing they believed was to become self-realized. So we're going to back up. We're going to actually, I don't know, back up, jump forward, but I created this graphic, and it's not really a proper representation of what's happening in the world. But here are four of the major religious denominations that are in the world today: Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and Christianity. And each of them has over here, there's the Bible. Each of them has a book of written scriptures they utilize. And then inside of each of these religions is this mystical area, this deeper symbolic subjective experience that each of them have. In Judaism, it's Kabbalah. And Hinduism, it's Tantra. And Christianity, it's mystics. And in Islam, it's Sufism. And these inner schools, or these inner thoughts in each of these religions, are very hermetic in sense that they utilize these ancient teachings to give meaning to, or the arise to, or the understanding of the belief system or the religion that they're involved with. And if we look here, we can see that here's all these different religions, and the Hermetic philosophies date even before all of these. They were clear back in ancient Egypt in the Hellenistic period. And so it's easy to see that these philosophies had an impact later on these major religions. And the best way to see that is to see this Hermetic philosophy at work inside of each of the religions. And so Hermeticism is a philosophical and esoteric tradition that encompasses a broad array of beliefs, practices, and mystical insights often associated with the pursuit of hidden knowledge, the interconnectedness of the universe, the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment through symbolic interpretation, and mystical experiences. And so this is, again, this Hermetic practice was this inner teaching, these more, let's call them souls that wanted to question where their beliefs came from. And they wanted to understand more of what these beliefs had to do with life, and how those beliefs could impact this ultimate goal of becoming self-realized. And so we can look up here and we can see that the ancient origins, emergence of Hermeticism was in Hellenistic times. This was a long time ago. And then, other things came to rise. And throughout the years, it was passed down through various, I would say, mystical organizations, brotherhoods, philosophical initiatic schools. And so this information was just passed mostly from master to student. And so there isn't a lot of written documentation about this. And then when it got into the medieval times, and kings and queens, priests, popes, whatever, they realized that this information had a lot of qualities that could lead someone to their own realization, and that they wouldn't need any kind of religion or intervention between man and heaven. And so they went on a conquest to eradicate most of this information. And so anyone that had knowledge, books, transcripts, scrolls, anything of any value, they would search down, confiscate, and then eventually even kill and try to eradicate this knowledge from the world. But it endured because it was very, very cleverly embedded into society. And in a class to come, we're going to look at some of the how all of this was like embedded into everyday beliefs, where it gave clues to go back and actually find these teachings if one was so inclined. So if self-realization is the single most efficient means to achieve self-awareness, what is the single most efficient way to achieve self-awareness? If the philosophers felt that this was the greatest thing for us to accomplish, I think that they would have figured out a way to get there, and they did. And that's what we're going to start to look at today, is how to begin this journey into self-awareness, and how to explore areas of our nature that are outside of our ability to experience as mortal beings. And I think that if we start in the most modern times, Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, was a mystic and an alchemist in and of himself, and he developed this process of individuation, this process of becoming a person that had a definition, their own definition of who they were. And in alchemy, this process of becoming a person that is completely unconscious and becoming a conscious individual is called the process of transmutation. And in upcoming presentations, we'll go through and we'll actually talk about this process step by step, and how that can unfold in one's life. And because again, this is probably the most important thing for us to experience in this world, is how to become a self-aware individual. I also have a podcast where my brother is recording different excerpts of a book I wrote a while back. Please go listen to them on Spotify. And at alchemicaltransmutation.com is a website that will give you a lot of the graphics and correlative graphics that you're going to see today, that you can kind of access and explore. And all of this stuff, all these podcasts, all these videos, everything will be on this webpage. And it's for everyone to access and hopefully learn what I've learned. And I'm not saying that I am a credible source of information, but I do have a curiosity and a temperament that I want to know what is truth, and I continuously ask and delve deeper and research and find. And so anything that I present today, please do your own research on it and come back and validate what I'm teaching you, because this is cool stuff. And I'm hoping that the way that I present it will be in a way that you can utilize it in your day-to-day life and begin to comprehend how completely immersed we are in this philosophy. So I like to call this the language of soul. Symbols give spirits the mean to teach the mind how to comprehend its attributes. not only do symbols have meaning, but the manner in which they are created has significance. So basically, we don't have a language to understand spirit. It doesn't have a direct way to communicate with us in a spoken language. It does so through subjective images that we pick up in our lives. And let me kind of give a correlation or a comparison here. Let's say that there was a poor, unfortunate soul that at a very young age was put into a closet. And this person spent the majority of their life in this closet. They were fed and taken care of, but their entire reality was the contents of this closet. And if you were to ask this person in this hypothetical situation, explain to me what the sun is, or the moon, or the sky, or a tree, if they didn't have any way, they hadn't ever experienced that, that would not be in their ability to explain to you. And so there is a language that alchemists over time kind of developed that gave symbols the ability to hold information within them, information that over time could be correlated one with another over different modalities of spirituality. And if you would learn the language or the symbols, then those symbols became a means for spirit to talk to your soul. And again, I'm using the word spirit and soul as two different things, and we are going to definitely distinguish between those two things today, because those are two words that are commonly interchanged and confounded. So here are some of the symbols that we're going to look at today. I don't know if you recognize any of them. I'm not going to go over them right now, but by the end of this presentation, my goal is that you will understand these symbols. And I'm not going to go any farther than this. There's so much more. This is not even the snowflake on the top of the glacier. I mean, this is just the very, very basic introduction to understanding this philosophy. And so in order to do this, we're going to go back in time to something that most people are aware of, especially in this area. Most people are Christian. They have the Bible. They're aware of the Bible, and they know of the Temple of Solomon that was described by Jeremiah in the Old Testament. There's a lot of mysticism behind the construction of the temple. We're not going to get into that. I'm just going to get into some symbols regarding this temple and where these symbols originated from. And so the Temple of Solomon, in the very front of it, had two columns. These columns weren't supporting anything. They were just columns that had significant meaning. And by moving between these columns and entering into the temple, it was a ritualistic act to symbolize the self-individuation of soul. So let's begin. We're going to jump from King Solomon to alchemy really quick. And in alchemy, the great creator, when it manifested itself into the universe, it did so in two ways. One way was called celestial salt, and that was the matter of the universe. The other was celestial niter, which was the energy of the universe. And so on these two columns, the red is representing energy, green is representing matter. There are two circles that are scored. Up and down, it means positive. Side to side or horizontal means negative. And so celestial salt was a negative factor, and celestial niter was a positive factor. And you've probably seen lots of graphics everywhere with the sun and the moon. And the marriage of the sun and the moon is what brings about our creation. And so on the side, the positive side, we have a man of the winds, and he has a baby in his tummy. And this is the great creator giving birth to spirit. And on the other side, you have the mother with a nurturing a baby. And this is the mother is the creator of the physical form. And so now we're going to jump over to Christianity, and we're going to look at Christ on the cross. And if you look on the right side, you notice that everything is masculine. Everything is full of energy, and on lots of movement and action. And on the left side, there it's feminine, and it depicts emotion and sadness. And what this is symbolizing is the Savior was what we want to become. We want to be the person in the middle. We want to become the combination of the two to become a self-individualized entity. So now we jump into Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. And in the Kabbalah, we have what is called the Tree of Life. This is what is really the Tree of Life. What most people see the Tree of Life as the branches reaching up and the roots going down is a Celtic mythology that refers to what's called the Yggdrasil. And so, but in the Jewish tradition, this was the Tree of Life, and it contains enormous amounts of symbolism. So the first thing, and we're going to spend years unlocking all the symbolism within inside this. I actually have a giant version of this inside my meditation room at home, where I look at that has labels and correspondences filling the entire, this whole depiction. So on the right side, you have the column of the masculine, or the sun. And on the left side, you have the feminine, or the moon. Again, this is positive and negative, not necessarily referring to gender. Gender is an attribute that arises from this, but this is in a spiritual sense. So as we look at the sun would symbolize spirit. This concept of spirit is something that is very difficult to understand, and yet everyone will agree that it's there. I got to see my father. I got to dress him in the funeral home after he had died, and it was just his body. There was no life inside of him. And so what is that life, that energy that animates form? That is spirit. And body is something that is just created by this earth. It's built from DNA. It's a process, but it can't seem to build itself unless it is imbued with spirit. And then when the two come together, it somehow has the ability to take that matter and to organize it into a form and function and create an individual. And here we can see that the alchemists and the Kabbalists would utilize this to begin to kind of map out the whole process of creation, and more so than the process of creation, but the means whereby to become a self-realized individual, to achieve the ultimate goal of this life and return to creator at some point by mastering all of the elements of the Tree of Life. In the Tree of Life, we'll just look at really quickly, the circles represent what are called Seraphot. They are similar in nature to the Christians' versions of archangels. And in a later date, I will actually take the Seraphot and compare them to the archangels. But in doing so, we can gain understandings about each of these entities, that they embody certain qualities or characteristics that we need to learn in our lives, that are part of becoming self-aware. The Hebrew alphabet, I have studied for a lot of years. I wouldn't be able to pronounce a word if you wrote it, but I understand the letters, and the letters have symbolic meanings. And the path between the 10 seraphot is the Hebrew alphabet. And so each of these letters correspond to different paths that travel in between the circles. And the Hebrew alphabet is divided into three categories: the mother letters, which are 3 and red in the slide, the double letters, which are 7, and the single letters, which are 12. Um, the mother letters represent, in essence, these different layers of reality or different planes of existence. The double letters represent the gates that we have to pass through on our journey to becoming a self-realized individual. And the single letters represent the zodiac and the qualities of the zodiac that are, again, necessary to master as we move into our awareness. Each of these are in the process of moving up the tree of life and moving from rung to rung or from seraph to seraph, how to master those qualities. This is enormous, but it's just an introduction for right now. So here we have this the tree of life with the positive and negative, and there are 4 different levels that consist of the tree of life that represent different planes of existence. And these planes are represented by a name that is called the tetragrammaton. And the tetragrammaton is the letters are Yud, He, Va, He, which, when you pronounce them correctly, I believe in Hebrew, it would be Yeshua, or it refers to like Christ or the God of Israel. And so each of these letters have a symbolic correlation with the elements. And so now we've moved from the positive and negative aspect of creation. There's the energy and the matter that come together to create something on this world, or to create this world and all living things on this world, and especially us. But then once we're here, we need to navigate through all these different layers of existence to understand who we are as a spiritual being. And we do this by understanding the elements and their correlation to the elements to the planes of existence. So each letter is represented by an element. Yud being the highest is fire. And so let's look at the symbols that are going with this. Fire is an upright triangle. A triangle pointing upwards would mean positive. Water, like fire, burns and it goes up. So that's an easy way to remember that. Water is a downward triangle. Water falls from the sky. All water runs to the ocean. So water is always going down. And the downward triangle represents a negative aspect. Air, which we breathe and which contains, the necessary components for us to exist, is again a positive attribute, but it's different than fire, and thus they put a bar through it. And earth, which is the clay of our existence, all the minerals that make us up, is represented by the triangle with a bar through it. So water and earth are distinguished with a bar through the triangle, and air and fire are distinguished with a bar through the triangle. And then I'm going to assign color to them because it just makes sense. And so fire, when we look at the coals of fire, they're red and orange and bright. Water, we look out across the lake on a clear blue sky, is bright blue. Air, when we look towards the sun appears yellow because of our atmosphere. The sun is actually white. I apologize, to everyone that believes that Superman is empowered by a yellow sun. It's actually a white sun that looks yellow through the atmosphere. Not just a geeky comment by me. And then the earth is covered with greenness and plants. And it is the plants that give the ability for life to exist. It begins the process of, the life cycle of the recycling of the atmosphere. But it takes fire and water for all these things. So all of these elements come together in some form or fashion to create reality. So on the tree of life, fire represents the world of emanation, or the divine. This is the spiritual plane. Water represents the world of creation, which is also, we refer to this as the astral plane. Air represents the world of formation, and this is also called the mental plane. And earth represents the physical plane, or the world of action. So as we look at this diagram, we can see that here we have the positive and negative, and all four of the elements acting upon that consist of the four dimensions of reality. That in order for us to communicate or understand spirit, we have to understand where things occur in the creation and how that creation occurs. And so basically in the world of emanation, a thought occurs, and then that thought is expanded, and then that thought is emotions and information, and everything is added to that. And when all that occurs, that thought moves from the divine world to the physical world and manifests it. And so this is a basic law of creation that we have within us, that if we anything that we accomplish, anything that we do in this life, for good or for bad, begins with a thought. And how we act on that thought, going down through the different layers of creation, is how that thought becomes manifest in our life. Again, that doesn't have to be a good thing. It can begin with a bad thing, but this is the law of the universe, and this is how things are created. So here the tetragrammaton represents the Yod He Vav He, is fire, water, air, and earth. So now we're going to jump to alchemy again, and what we call the Tria Prima. And these are the prime principle, collectively lay the foundation of alchemical theory and practice, guiding practitioners in the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment, inner transformation, and the evaluation of base substances to higher states of existence. Known as the Tria Prima, or Tri Prima, they are believed to constitute the fundamental components of all matter and creation, essential to the understanding of alchemical philosophy and the process of transformation and transmutation. So the three symbols on the left, the triangle with the cross above it, is represented by sulfur. And sulfur represents this fiery energy linked with masculinity and the element of fire. Its symbolism embodies the spiritual essence within matter, or the animating force permeating all existence. So sulfur is spirit. Going to the bottom one, salt. Salt is a circle with a bar, a horizontal bar, which is representing negative in, or physicality. It is the solid stability, crystallization, the physical expression. It is the feminine aspect of creation. It is the element of earth, and this represents the physical body. The physical body and the spirit have to join together to create Mercury. And Mercury is the symbol with the circle, the crescent on top, and the cross underneath. And Mercury embodies fluidity, transition, and transformation, symbolizing the soul emerging from the convergence of matter and energy associated with the element of water. It represents the mind or soul imbuing human beings with intelligence and awareness. So if we look here we have universal mind that, again, is divided into two things: celestial niter and celestial salt. So celestial niter, and you can see, is composed of the two positive elements of fire and air. Celestial salt is composed of the two negative elements of earth and water. So fire and air come together to create sulfur. Earth and water come together to create salt. And water and air come together to create mercury. So now we've gone from the doors, the pillars of King Solomon's temple, to these three aspects of salt, sulfur, and mercury. So I found it interesting that as a human being, we only see three colors: red, green, and blue. We only have receptors for those three colors in our eyes. And they start, when we see the light spectrum, it starts at red, moves to green, and then finally ends at blue. So it's kind of, I decided to assign the alchemical tria prima, or the three principles, to color as a correlation. And again, this is something is entirely new. It just seemed obvious to me. And so red is spirit, begins with spirit and moves into physical body. When red joins with physical body, the ultimate outcome is the individuation of a soul. And so here we have the three primes, salt, sulfur, and mercury, represented with their symbol and their color. And the reason I'm showing you this color is that we're going to look at how these things come together, because in the alchemist laboratory, which is right here, I'm trying to move things around my screen so I can see you. The alchemist has three different aspects of his laboratory. He has the library, he has his oratory, or place where he meditates and prays, and he has the place where he actually performs rituals and builds and puts things together. So this would study, prayer, and work are the three aspects that represents the three primes. So in this, mercury, in between the columns of celestial niter and celestial salt, is mercury. And so again, as spirit joins with matter and produces a baby, that baby, from the moment it's born, begins to assimilate information and knowledge. And that knowledge is individualized, it's subjective, and that represents the formation or the creation of mercury. So here we go, King Solomon's temple. This is the same thing. Here we are as an individualized being as we move through the pillars of creation. Carl Jung concept of individuation refers to the process of integrating the consciousness and unconscious aspects of the physical to achieve a state of psychological wholeness and self-realization. And so this process of self-realization begins by understanding that we have the spirit side and we have this material side. And these two things come together to create something new and unique, and that is soul. And that, so we take the unconscious, which is spirit, that is trying to communicate through us through intuition and insights and dreams. We have the conscious aspect, which is our world and everything that we're experiencing and looking at and learning. When those two things come together, they create this unique combination of the both. And when we die, our brain is composed of two components: the brain material and the energy that gives rise to the organization and the neurotransmitters within the brain. And so that organization of energy continues on, and that is what we call soul. So soul has two different names: mind and soul. Over here is Mercury's catechus. Mercury is representing the individuation of an individual of soul. surrounded by the two serpents of matter and energy that give rise to that awareness. So if we take a minute and get close to your computer and stare intently at these three circles. There's a little circle in the middle. Stare at that for a few seconds here, focusing on a little circle in the middle. Don't move your eyes around, just focus on that. And in kind of in a surprise moment, I'm going to change those circles to blanks. They're just going to be empty white circles. But inside those circles are going to be some colors. And I want you to pay attention to what those colors are. And if you blink or look away, those colors will disappear. So don't blink or look away when I switch, because it's gonna hold those colors in your vision. And this is a phenomena called after image. So here we are, and take a second, and as it begins to fade, you realize that these are three empty circles. But when we started, those circles were full of color. And what you saw was these three colors. Unless you're colorblind, then that's a whole nother topic. But these are the reflective or opposite colors from the primary colors of light, which are red, blue, and green. So red, magenta, and yellow are the physical or negative side of that. And these three colors are what we see in every copy machine in the world. They make, when you combine these colors in print, they produce all other colors. And it's interesting, and when you combine them, they become black. Where when you combine red, blue, and green, the additive colors, they become white. So as red, blue, and green are additive principle, magenta, yellow, and cyan are a negative principle. And so then we can come back to, again, the elements, and we can create three more primaries. Earth combines with fire to create phosphorus. Air combines with earth to make the atmosphere or cinnabar. And water combines with fire to make antimony, which is also, it can combine water and fire is what happens in plants to create the life within plants, to create carbohydrates, which the animals eat, and which ultimately ends to the creation. So all of these three things are becoming the basis of our planet, our ecosystem, how we as an individual, a spiritual individual, have a materialistic world to evolve and grow into, where spirit can have a body. And so again, these three colors combine, they're secondary colors that combine to make a negative or black. So now that we have these tools, these symbols, hopefully that I've explained efficiently, they form into what we call the Philosopher's Stone, which contain all of these. So positive and negative. Positive is a masculine attribute that's represented by a square. Feminine negative is a feminine aspect represented by a circle. So in the center of this, you have the circle and the square representing the two, spirit and body. Then the four elements with inside the square come to play: earth, water, air, and fire. And those elements create the individuation of soul, which is salt, sulfur, and mercury. And the individuation of soul is brought about by its physical creation of antimony, cinnabar, and phosphorus. And so you get this symbol. And here is the overall diagram of how all of this came to play. This is all the information that we covered today. So we started with the pillars of creation of salt and niter, and we have moved down into the individuation of soul and the planetary aspect or the physical creation for soul to exist within. So we're going to look at the tree of life again, and we can see that those three symbols represent those three aspects, but now we're going to turn those symbols on their side to represent subconscious, subjective, and objective consciousness. The subjective consciousness is our individual awareness, meaning that what we experience in this world is the sum total of all the things that we have learned. And so whenever anyone is experiencing something, they're experiencing it through that lens of information that they have gained throughout their lifetime. And so if you spent your lifetime learning and accumulating information, your subjective consciousness is much more adept and much more broad and much more fulfilled. Subconsciousness is your spirit, the ultimate source of all information, of all intuition, the rising of thoughts, the origin of dreams. It is the spirit that is trying to guide us through this existence. And our objective consciousness is our physical reality on this planet. It's what we share with each other. It's how we interact with this world through our five objective senses. Now, they're collaborating negative aspects represent. So again, sulfur represents our potential of realization, that we can realize that we are more than a physical being, that we are a spiritual entity. Mercury represents our individuation. Our spirit has now gained its ability to separate itself from the creator and become an individual entity within this creation by means of salt, which is our corporeality, our physical existence. These three things combine to make our individual consciousness. They are separate, but they are also one. And as the three colors combine to make white, the three colors are a sense, when we learned how to separate them and then recombine them, is the process of illumination. Now, on their opposite is how we perceive ourselves through the world, and our imagination is where these dreams and ideas and things form first. Imagination is probably the greatest gift that Creator gave us. Intelligence is part of our individuation, in the sense is that our individuation is only as great as our experience. So again, if you've lived in a closet your whole life, your intelligence is extremely limited because you haven't looked outside of that closet. And so life is about exploration. It's about study. It's about research. It's about talking to people, understanding, exploring, learning. All of these things come together to create the intelligence that fuels our individuation of soul. And if it wasn't for all the things that have happened on this earth throughout all time, our corporeality is a part of evolution, and we are still evolving. We are still growing. What is it we're going to ultimately come as a species? What will this planet ultimately evolve into? It's changed many, many times through this process of individuation and growing on this planet. Things have changed. The planet is trying to create a higher, more capable vessel for spirit to inhabit. So when we talk about I and me, I is representing our individual consciousness, how we are. Me is the collective consciousness, or how we are defined by the world around us. So I is a reflection of me, and me is a reflection of I. And we need both of those things to help us define our existence. Me represents the objective aspect of the self concept or self-image formed through social interactions, roles, and identities. It includes the beliefs, attitudes, and characteristics that individuals attribute to themselves based on their experience and interactions with others. The me is shaped by external influences such as culture, society, and relationships, and encompasses roles such as parent, friend, employee, etc. The I refers to the subjective aspect of self, the immediate awareness or consciousness that experiences thoughts, feelings, and sensations in the present moment. It is the inner observer, the sense of self-awareness that perceives and interacts with the world. The I is the aspect of self that says, I am thinking, I am feeling, I am experiencing. So here we go again, we'll review of everything put together here. This is all the information of these alchemical and symbols that begin to correlate and come together and form the vesicles for spirit to utilize to expand concepts as we move through this. And so by learning these concepts, these symbols, we can start to look at this ancient knowledge and see these symbols and concepts expressed through their symbology. And if we don't have a shared understanding of what these symbols mean, we look at these depictions and we just have no understanding of what they are. So here again, all of this together creates the catechist. The catechist represents Mercury's staff, or the individual gaining consciousness in reality. Okay, so we're going to end on this slide right here. And we're going to look at this slide in the sense of what we have learned so far in this class today. So this is an alchemical depiction entitled The Precious New Pearl. And so we see right here, we have the 4 elements. On this side, we have the positive. On this side, we have the negative. And in between the elements on the positive and negative, we create the 3 primes. And above that, we have antimony, which is these 3 primes and their ultimate expression in the physical world. Now, it's interesting to note that the moon represents negative and the sun represents positive, but it's switched on the top. And what this is representing is the negative aspect of creation, which is the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom, or the 3 levels of existence. The antimony, the cinnabar, and the phosphate. And so these 3 things are represented in the background of this as the world or creation in which the individual or soul is created and is sustained and supported by. So we're going to end here today, and hopefully we can have some discussion about this later. The next class that I want to teach is going to be about the 7 steps to gain self-awareness and all the symbolism involved in those 7 steps, and how the ancients knew that to achieve the ultimate goal of becoming self-realized, we had to progress through these 7 stages. And they knew that there was probably nothing more important than these 7 stages. And so they preserved them in amazing ways throughout history and time. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope this went well and you understand, and that there's more to come as we go through and explore these wonderful principles. May the blessings be, and hope to talk to you soon.